Ready to go? Perfect. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's 1 o'clock, Thursday, May 28th, and I welcome you to this Canmore Local Assessment Review Board hearing. I would like to remind everyone that the ARB hearings are open to the public and that this hearing will be recorded and streamed live. The video recording will be our record of hearing. We are here today to review the complaint and subsequent evidence as filed for tax roll 18913 at the municipal address 626 4th Street, Canmore, Alberta. I will start by introducing the panel and then ask the parties to introduce themselves. After that, I will explain our standard hearing procedure and ask for comments in that regard. My name is Christoph Breyer, and I'm the presiding officer, chair appointed to this panel for today. The other panel members with me today are
Councillor Tanya Faubert.
John Bedwell.
Thank you. Does anyone have any objection to the panel as constituted? Thank you. I'm now going to have the parties introduce themselves, starting with the complainant representative or representative. Would you please state for the record your name, organization, and your role in the hearing? Please indicate whether you are the owner of the property under complaint.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, you didn't speak to the bell.
Please press the button.
Oh, sorry, it's actually that one.
Sorry.
It's confusing.
Perfect.
Mr. Chair, I'm Derek Bullen. I'm the agent for my wife, Susan Bullen, who's the owner of the property, 626 4th Street.
Perfect. Thank you. Now the respondent, please. Would you please state for the record your name, organization, and your position with the municipality?
Sure. My name is Deanne Bannerman. I'm with Legacy Municipal Services, and I'm the appointed assessor for the town of Canmore. And I have Grayson here with me as well, who's another assessor. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. The LARP standard practice is to have the complainant present all of their evidence first, followed by questions from the respondent and then the panel. Next, the respondent presents their evidence, followed once again by questions from the complainant and then the panel. The complainant will have an opportunity for rebuttal. Finally, both parties will have an opportunity to present their final argument and summarize their evidence for the panel, with the complainant presenting first. If anyone needs a break or if any problem comes up, please let the panel know as soon as possible, and we can address those things as we go. I will also take this time to remind everyone to please turn off any mobile devices, which I will do now. Done. Are there any questions regarding the procedure for today, or is everyone satisfied with the process as was laid out?
I'm very satisfied with the process as laid out, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I see both parties have exchanged disclosure evidence before the hearing. To save time, I propose that we mark all documents for the record now. That won't stop anyone raising questions about admissibility later. If any such questions arise, we can still deal with them and strike material from the record later if necessary. Is everyone comfortable with this procedure?
I agree, Mr. Chair.
Do you want to mark the evidence, please?
Thank you very much. Yes, we received the following disclosure evidence for tax roll 18913, complainant package C1, the complainant form, 2 pages, complainant package C2, complainant disclosure, 41 pages, complainant package C3, complainant rebuttal, 7 pages, and the respondent package R1, the respondent disclosure, 84 pages.
Thank you. Are there any other preliminary issues for this panel to address?
None for me, Mr. Chair.
Perfect. Well, then we'll start with the presentations. Mr. Bullen, we are ready to hear your evidence if you're set to go ahead.
I am. I'm set to go ahead. All right, run it in slideshow mode.
Oh, sorry, you have to turn the mic on. There you go, you're good.
Could you run it in slideshow mode, please? Perfect. So first I'll tell the board how we got here. So my wife and I bought our first home here in 1994 when our kids were little, and we bought our second home, the one that we're talking about today, in 2004. And our kids are all grown, they're all in their 30s, and my wife and I are now retired. And so let me tell you how we came to this hearing. Next slide. So this is our home, and it's the one on the right. There's an identical duplex on the left. And with the property tax assessment at 2.1 million, we were like, well, our kids are grown, we're retired, that's a lot of money, we should put it on the market. We talked to a lot of realtors, and they were all like, you're not getting 2.1 million for that. So we finally settled on a realtor at 1.85, and then a week later the realtor said, look, you gotta be 1.75 or you're not gonna get any interest. And this is in May 2025. And this is before July 2025 when the assessed value is to be crystallized. So we listed it, and as I go on through the evidence, I'll tell you the number of views, submissions, no offers. And so that was what started with, I think the actual value of the property is below 1.75. It's closer to that than 2.1. Next slide. So, and this was the residential payer report that I was working from. And you can see that it says duplex housing, 1655 square feet. And this home, like lots of homes in downtown Canmore, it's a floodplain, so you can't build a basement in the water. So the garage, the mechanical room, and the entry levels at the bottom. The kitchen, the living room, the main floor is the first floor. And then there's a loft in the back above the first floor. But anyways, that's the assessment, 2.141, that I thought was too high. So the first comparables that I got from the assessor, you can see there's my square footage area, 1655. There's my home on the left. There's a home on Veterans Way in the middle, which was purchased for 2.3 million. Its 2025 assessment was 2.5 million, and its adjusted sale price is now 2.9 million, and it's the unit on the left side, and I'm going to speak to this unit a little bit in a minute. And then the other one was 506 Fifth Avenue, which is the third picture, and that one's 5 houses down from us. Okay, so if you could just flip. So what I wrote back the assessor was, I said, I don't think the lot of 619 7th Street is comparable to ours. It's a very unique lot. The one side of it looks out over Centennial Park and has unobstructed panoramic views all the way from the east end of Mount Runnell through Hulling, all the way to Three Sisters, and it has the park, and that's one of the main gates into the park that's directly across from the property. And then on the back, it backs onto Policeman's Creek and has unobstructed views of Policeman's Creek, and that's their private dock, and it's quite a large private dock that they have onto the creek. It's a half block to downtown, so I said, I think this is a unique lot. That lot and the lots to the right of it, they're very unique in Canmore. I don't think it's a comparable lot. Next slide, please. And the response was, well, and this is on page 5 of Exhibit C2, we went back to the original building plans and determined there's an error in classification. The corrected property data results in a change in assessment from 2.1 to 2.231. However, we won't be making this change the current year's assessment. Instead, the corrections will be carried forward and reflected in next year's assessment. Next slide. And along with that, from the assessor, I got a whole list of new comparables. So you can see now the square footage of my property has changed. It's still the same property. And now I'm being compared to the property in the middle, which is 600 square feet larger than mine. So it's like my house plus an apartment. And they're newer. I was built in 2004. Those are built in 2021. And it's a new modern build of luxury condos, and then the other ones to the right are built in 2023, again, new luxury build. So these are the new comparables that I was told now justified my tax price. Next one. Right. So my question of why I'm here at the hearing, so here's my new appraisal report. You can see the square footage has now been adjusted. It's now 2,456 square feet. It's now a 3-story, no basement. If my home failed in the open market at 1.75 million, how would I get more buyers if I raised the listing price to 2.231 million? So that's why I'm here with the board. Next slide, thanks, man. So I'm just going to use C3, my rebuttal submission, because I think it has some of the points. And so I think the biggest point is that the actual real estate market materially conflicts with the valuation. And what's interesting is my previous neighbor, John, had an assessment on his property tax for 1.4 million, but he ended up selling that one at 1.1 million. Now that was in 2020. But now I've got the thing, if my property can't attract a buyer at 1.75 million on the open market, and I'm a willing seller, I'm a retired guy, I'm a willing seller, then any valuation materially above 1.75, I think that requires very persuasive evidence. So for the specifics, I put my property on the market on May 15th for 1.85 million. I was advised by the realtor to change it to 1.75 million, so on May 20th we changed to 1.75 million, and it remained listed through July 1st, the valuation date, all the way to July 10th. And it was exposed to the open market through a licensed realtor, and it received no offers. It had 1,700 online viewings, it had 4 in-person showings, and no offers. And the real estate agent just recommended to us to drop the price again, and on July 10th we took it off the market. So that's one of my rebuttals, is that's what the actual market shows. Next slide, please. Next is, these comparables that come from the assessor are not adequately similar. You can see I highlighted the year that they were built. These are new builds, and they're 2 builds. So each one's a spec home that was built as a duplex, a pair on 3rd Street and a pair on 9th Street. You can also see they're all larger than mine. One is 2 or 600 square feet larger, the other one's 400 square feet larger. So if I look at pages 7 and 8 on Exhibit R1, my 626 Street is identified as property type duplex housing. Then later, the assessor uses detached residential homes to calculate market value on page 11. And the assessor says valuation process for assessing detached residential properties. And the assessor also says residential detached properties in the town of Canmore are primarily valued using the market modified cost approach. So the evidence submission, R1, goes between duplex housing, residential properties generally, and detached residential properties. And in Canmore specifically, and again, I've been here since 1994, I started with a 4-plex. Duplex and detached properties trade in different buyer segments and price structures. Then, on page 10 of the evidence submission R1, the assessor says, a principle of appraisal assessment requires that each property be appraised as though it was being put to its most profitable use. And then at the end of that says, the concept is most commonly discussed in connection with underutilized land. And highest and best use analysis doesn't explain why materially dissimilar properties were used. And how it's used for vacant land is if I have land beside a Canadian Tire or a Safeway, but I choose to build a bungalow on there, I'm not getting the best value of the land, but I have a duplex on a lot that's zoned for a duplex. I have the best value for the land. So the assessor's evidence doesn't reliably isolate the market value of a 2004 duplex of this size and configuration. It's 20 years old. 2 years old. Next slide. The reclassification timing raises reliability concerns, and this is a difference in process. So the change in category has several inconsistencies. So the assessor states, and this is page 18 of Exhibit R1, assessments are not based on previous year's assessments. And then on the same page, the assessor says, an assessment from 1 year is not and should not be merely modified to become the subsequent year's assessment. And then the assessor makes the case that the practical reason for recategorizing and creating an increase is that they discovered something missing and incorrect after 2 decades of property taxes. So if every year is independently assessed, yet the revised valuation and categorization is using historical values. So it raises questions about the reliability of both the previous and the current evaluation process. Like, how could it be wrong for so long and all of a sudden now be something different? Next one. So also in R1, the assessor applies inconsistent appraisal standards. So the assessor criticizes generalized inference and aggregated data analysis for the condos I presented of the same age in and around the town, same age, same size. But simultaneously, the assessor defends mass appraisal methods, group statistical modeling, and generalized market behavior. So the assessor states that I used inferred values and aggregated property types, yet they describe their process of mass appraisal on page 10 of R1 as valuation of many properties using standard procedures and statistical testing. Valuation models developed for mass appraisal purposes must represent supply and demand patterns for groups of properties rather than a single property. So generalized modeling, it's not invalid. And in R1, there's lots of citations that this is the way to get a property. However, if generalized methods are used, they need to be applied consistently. They can't be applied one way for the assessor, but criticized if I apply them the same way for my property. So the issue is not whether mass appraisal is permissible, but whether it was reliably applied to this specific property, 626 4th Street. So here's the 2 sets of comparables I got from the assessor. And in a previous note from the assessor said she may go back to 619 7th Street and 506 5th Avenue and recategorize those 2. May. I don't know if that's happened. But anyways, what's interesting here is if you look at 619 7th Street, it sold for 2.3, and then 2025 it was assessed at 2.5 million, and now it's assessed to 2.9 million. The one below it, 506 5th Avenue, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about, that's interesting. 2025 was assessed at 2.1 million, and now it's assessed at 1.967. It's actually down 6%. The one above it's up 14%. That one's down 6%. And I'll tell you on the next slide why I feel why that's important. If I look at the other ones, what's interesting when I talk about inconsistent appraisal standards is 909A and 909B are the same build, same builder, same lot, same viewpoint, same location, same square footage. Yet, one has increased 457K as of July 2025, and the others only increased 195K. I don't understand how the methodology comes up with such a difference. And then 727 and 725, I don't remember if you see the picture, but the 2 luxury condos are identical, mirror images of each other, same exposure, same everything. And one went up by 439K. The other one attached to it only went up by 330K. So how are these inconsistencies happening for buildings that are identical? Next slide. And what's interesting, the one that went down 6%, it's 5 houses over from mine. That on the left is 626, and that one beside it is, what is that one? 506 Fifth Avenue. And so again, you know, the assessors say mine should go up. Meanwhile, the closest house to me in the comparables went down 6%. So I'm just indicating I have doubt as to the assessors, how they get their valuations. So we can go one more. So I did get my own comparables on AI as a secondary source, and it just aggregates from CREB, MLS, everything public domain, but it does the same thing. It just aggregates mass data that's published on the web. So what I repeatedly asked and have not yet found out, I have not had any evidence as to how value is derived for any of these properties. So the modified cost approach, which is on page 13 of R1, it shows no calculations. It just shows this. It has one number. It just says, I do all these things, and then this is the number. The assessor never provides an example where one can verify or see the numbers or the calculations or how they come up to. So the evidence submission in R1 doesn't clearly demonstrate, and none of my correspondents have ever demonstrated clearly how the significance differences in age, size, and classification between 626 4th Street and the comparables, how that was ever calculated to come up with this number. And I think this is my last point, and then I'll summarize. The assessor's increase is internally inconsistent. There's a request in R1 to make an increase further to what you've been shown here. And so the complaint I have is for the 2026 tax appraisal. The assessor's original rebuttal to me, rather than justify the calculated market values on the initial comparables, the assessor reclassified my home after 2 decades, increased the value, and stated it would be a higher tax category in 2027. And that's what she says. She says in 2027 it's going to be a higher tax category. Then in R1, which you have, the assessor goes further to use my complaint over the 2026 price to raise the value of the property in the current year by $90,000 from $2.141 to $2.231 million. So this request to increase the property value is inconsistent with the evidence submission. On page 27 of R1, the assessor states, the requested property assessment for the subject property is both correct and equitable, and that refers to the 2.141. As the assessor believes the assessment was already correct and equitable, the requested increase undermines confidence in the precision of the original valuation. So, in summary, this is why I have doubt that the assessed value reflects the true market conditions. The actual market evidence, willing seller, engaging the mass market for willing buyers, with a listing realtor and multiple realtors coming in for showing. It conflicts sharply with the assessed value. The comparables selected by the assessor are materially different. They're newer, they're much bigger. The property classification changed only after I issued a complaint. The assessor applies appraisal principles inconsistently, and the assessor has not clearly demonstrated how those differences were adjusted to arrive at the final valuation. That's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bullen. Any questions from the respondent, please?
Yes, I do have a couple of questions. You can stay at the microphone if you'd like. Yeah. Sure. So I just wanted to get some clarification. You were talking about some of the comparables, and you were talking about increases versus decreases, referring to the chart that we had provided you.
Correct.
And so I just wanted to clarify that you were referring to the time-adjusted sale price, or the sale price adjusted to the market conditions of July 1st, 2025, versus the assessment when you were looking at those properties. Could you bring that slide up?
This is
That
what,
one's fine, yeah.
yeah, this is what I'm looking at. So that's the sales price adjusted to July 1st, 2025.
Okay, so when we're looking at calling it increases, it's not that the assessment itself increased, it's that that's the difference between their market-adjusted sale price and their assessment.
Correct, but my point is, my house was listed from May 15th through to July 1st at 1.75, which is the comparable price for every value in that column on my condo, and not a single offer, 4 showings, and feedback from a qualified realtor that it was overpriced for the market as of July 1st, 2025. So the actual market, 1.75, not selling, compares directly to the sale price adjusted July 1st, 2025.
Okay, so just to clarify, your property was listed, but it did not sell.
Correct.
Okay, and also I want to clarify regarding your property. So does it have any below-grade area? Or is it 3 stories all above grade?
It has no below-grade areas other than the frost wall.
Sure, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Looking to the board, any questions to the board, to the complainant?
Yeah, I do, if I might.
Yes?
The change in classification on, I guess primarily the square footage. Is the square footage now correct?
Pedwell, I don't know exactly how this works, but my house, and my
Yeah.
understanding, other houses that are built on the floodplain,
Yeah,
that the bottom floor is considered the entry, the
Yeah.
main living floor is considered the second floor, and then the loft is a third floor, and they're categorized, and the first, all those comparables, our house, 619 17 Street Veterans Way, 506 Fifth Avenue, they're all constructed the same way, and they're all categorized the same way. There's a new duplex on Veterans Way coming, and I'm going to guess it's going to be categorized as basement and 2 stories. That's how the town categorized it when the plans were submitted.
okay, I'm not sure that's quite answering my question. Like, originally you've been assessed for, as I understand it, of having a condo around 1,600 square feet.
Correct. Can you go to the original assessment? One more. Yes.
Yeah,
So here-
1,655.
So what 1655 square feet is, it's the square footage of the main living area
Okay.
and the loft.
Okay.
Right? And the garage is 516 square feet, and the finished, it's called a finished basement, is 801 square feet. And so if you go to the next one, in the new one, the garage is still 515 square feet, but what's happened is the basement is now called the first floor, the 802 square feet. It's taken from basement categorization.
Oh, okay.
And it's put into housing categorization.
And just to clarify, there's no change to the property, anything?
Property hasn't changed for
Hasn't
22
been
years
touched.
since
Okay,
construction.
good. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so the difference is the garage,
The difference is the basement.
basement.
So when it's built, when those first comparables are there, they call the bottom level with the garage, the mechanical room, a finished basement, because it also has a bathroom and it has 2 bedrooms. So they say that's a finished basement. That's what they call it. And that's how the plans were submitted, and same with these houses. And then they call the living area the main, with the kitchen, living room, and master, plus the loft. And so same square footage, it's just how they categorized it.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you.
Any questions? No questions? I have some questions. You said the property was on the open market, willing seller to a willing buyer. How long was it on the market?
It was on the market from May 15th until July 10th, 2025.
May 15th. 2025?
Correct.
Yeah, last year. Yeah.
Yeah. And the valuation date is July 1st, 2025.
Correct. That's all my questions.
Thank you, Mr.
Thanks so
Chairman.
much. To the respondent?
Is it all right if I use the other podium?
You're welcome. Go ahead.
Okay, and I just wanted to clarify a couple things before I get into my presentation that were addressed by the complainant. So there were questions regarding, in the first part of our document, whether it was detached housing or semi-detached, and that was in reference to the market modified cost approach, in reference to mass appraisal and market value. And I just want to clarify that whether it said detached or semi-detached, they're all valued the same way. So the only difference is that in our stratifications, so we're using the same valuation method, but the stratifications are different. So when we're looking at semi-detached, we're looking at the sales of semi-detached properties when comparing and preparing the assessments, versus a detached home, we would be looking at detached homes when we're preparing the assessments. So just to clarify that, and that was also relating to the highest and best use, obviously. Sorry, I shouldn't say obviously, but the highest and best use of the subject property would be its current use at this time. We include reference to different appraisal theory and to different legislative references throughout our disclosure, which aren't specifically to the property, but while we're here, we're using that information to both educate, and we don't know how the complainant's presentation is going to relate to some of these different concepts, so we want to have it available for the board and for the complainant as well. So to start off, we'll go to page 3 of my material. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to outline that assessments must be prepared annually. This legislated valuation standard is market value, and that the assessor must prepare assessments in a fair and equitable manner. So what we're asking for is for the property at 626 4th Street, tax roll number 18913, is we're asking for the Assessment Review Board to increase the assessment from $2,141,000 to $2,231,000. And this was a result of a data change to the property. So the complainant also referenced assessments being prepared on an annual basis, and I want to clarify that they are, and they're independent of previous years. However, when we're talking about the physical characteristics of the property, that's something that we have the authority to make corrections to and should be making corrections to. And since it was identified as a data error during the inquiry period before the complaint was filed, we took the opportunity to correct the data as it should have been, but did suggest or tell the complainant that we would be making the changes for future year instead of changing it during the current year, which is how we normally do data changes. Because this property is appearing before the Assessment Review Board, this is why we're asking for an increase, because it really technically should be increased because the physical characteristics of it have been incorrect for the last 20-some years. So turning to page 4 of my disclosure, we're just looking at a photograph of the outside of the subject property. I realize there's a lot of trees in the image, but that's sometimes the best we can get in Canmore. We also have provided a location map and an aerial photo depicting where the property is in relation to the South Canmore neighborhood. On page 7, we are showing the original assessment data that we have, showing the $2,141,000 And then on page 8, we're showing the recommended revised assessment for $2,231,000. And we'll go into what the specific property changes were a little bit further into my presentation. So turning to page 9 through 12, property assessments in Alberta are prepared in accordance with the Municipal Government Act and matters relating to assessment and taxation regulation. The legislation requires assessments to reflect market value, be prepared using mass appraisal, reflect the fee simple estate, and reflect the typical market conditions as of the legislated valuation date of July 1st, 2025. We also go into explaining that the assessments were prepared using the market modified cost approach, which we feel is the most appropriate method of valuation for detached and semi-detached homes in the town of Canmore. We further note that we used sales from July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2025. These sales were analyzed. They were valid land title transfer transactions, and then they were all market adjusted to reflect the current market conditions as of that July 1st, 2025 date. So now, turning to page 13, this is the new data for the subject property. You've seen what the old data was in the complainant's submission. So basically, that is the original. So basically what had happened is that the basement area, the size, the house didn't change. It still has 3 levels, but what we discovered through the inquiry period was that the bottom level was classified as basement area. So there are differences in value between below grade and above grade area. That's solidly appraisal theory, not even theory, but practice, that there is a difference in the values between below grade and above grade. So we did verify with their building plans, and I mean, it is typical in the South Canmore neighborhood not to have basements because of the floodplains and the land use bylaw. So on pages 14 through to 16, we're showing the excerpts from the building plans themselves, which demonstrate that no, there is no basement area. So we've had to make that correction, which is why you're seeing a difference in the square footage of the property. So on page 17, this is showing the revised data that we have based on the building plans that we had at the time. So we did communicate this information to the property owner at the time, letting them know, as I had already said, that we would wait until next year to make the changes. However, as mentioned, when we're coming here and we're looking at comparables, which is why there's 2 different sets of comparables, we're trying to show support for the assessment, then we have to really call apples apples and oranges oranges, and these are different types of properties. And we do submit that correcting the inaccurate physical data, it really does create fairness and equity amongst the different properties that are already classed that way, as having their above grade area classed as above grade area. So turning to page 18, I want to talk a little bit about the annual assessments. So section 285 of the MGA requires assessments to be prepared annually. The respondent relies upon several court and board decisions where the boards confirm that assessments are created anew every year, and they're not based upon prior year's assessments. The respondent also submits that year-over-year percent changes are not recognized valuation methodology under Alberta legislation, and the issue before the board is whether the assessment reflects the market value as of July 1st, 2025, based on valid land title transfers. So the board does have the authority to increase an assessment. That has been spelt out very clearly in the MGA. Section 467.1 sub 1.1 of the MGA expressly authorizes the board to either increase, confirm, or decrease an assessment. It's all within their power. The respondent submits that the evidence before the board demonstrates that the original assessment was understated the subject property's market value because the property characteristics were incorrectly coded. So when we go to page 31, I just wanted to touch a little bit briefly on the use of artificial intelligence. We've seen a huge uptick in that in our, sorry, that's page 21. We've seen a real uptick in complainants and property owners using AI to form their opinions regarding property assessments. AI is an excellent tool. No complaints about it. However, just to be clear, if AI doesn't know the answer to something, they make it up. They have disclaimers on every program out there. As you can see on page 22, I use ChatGPT, but they do have a disclaimer on there that basically AI can make mistakes and to check important information. So it's caused a lot of confusion amongst property owners this year, and it's been a little bit more challenging for us trying to educate, but just wanted to say that it really isn't something that should be given any weight into the board's decision. So the information that the complainant submitted regarding AI, the study, although he claims that it was just a refinement of all the other studies out there, the AI analysis itself acknowledges that there's not a single clean benchmark series for Canmore during the relevant period. It also says that the analysis relies on broad assumptions, generalized market commentary, inferred values, sparse data, and it estimates across all property types rather than just the subject property specifically. So using AI does not analyze the subject property. It doesn't identify a data set or any of the sources used. It did not just provide duplex sales, it provided the residential sales. So it didn't distinguish between property types. It didn't analyze quality, utility, effective age, or location adjustments. And it doesn't follow recognized appraisal methodology. So on page 23, we have provided, excuse me, I lose my voice quickly. So on page 23, we've provided assessment comparables or sale comparables of similar quality 3-story no basement duplex properties within the same market area as the subject property. We do note that, we do admit that the subject property is the oldest out of all the comparables that we've provided. However, you can see the differences between the size and the year built between the comparables we provided and the relationship to the assessment at the end of the day, that being lower than the comparables that we've provided, significantly lower, to account for the difference in the age and the size of the above grade area. Oops. Sorry. And I do want to highlight that South Canmore neighborhood is one of the premium locations in the town of Canmore. It's close to downtown and the Bow River, makes it very desirable and very attractive. So just to respond on my page 25, and I hope my page numbers are numbered the same as the ARB has put in there as well, just if there's any confusion, I'm referring to my page numbers. So on page 25, the respondent, or the complainant, has provided several sales that they included listings for, which we're responding to. The respondent has reviewed all of the properties that were relied on by the complainant. And we submit that these properties are not directly comparable to the subject. They are all 2-story with basement duplexes. As we've already discussed, there is a difference between below and above grade area and the value attributable to that. They're also located in different market locations, including Silvertip, Hubman Landing, Wilson's Way, and Lord's Grassy Ridge. So they differ in market location and market appeal from the subject property being in South Canmore. So I wanted to also highlight, and this is in my Appendix A, I just want to talk a little bit about post facto sales. So all of the sales that were referenced by the complainant had either sold after the valuation date, or there was still no land title transfers to date, which means even if land titles is maybe 2 months, a month to 2 months for a transfer to actually go through, they're that old or that new compared to when the assessment was prepared. So we really do want to state listing prices do not establish a market value, and that's because they're not completed market transactions. The length of time that the subject property was marketed for was 33 days, which was shown on the listing in their complainant's package. So 33 days on market when you have typical of about 2 months isn't actual, I wouldn't say that it's been marketed for a reliable length of time to actually test the market to see if buyers would commit to that price. So the reason we don't use sales, even in this process, and we would object to them being included, is because they were not known or knowable at the time that the assessments were prepared. We're really good, those of you who've seen me before, or heard me before, we're really good at predicting the past, because that's what we're always looking at. That's why we use a legislated historical point in time, and we use historical sales that we adjust up to that point in time. I would love to predict the future. I'd probably buy a lottery ticket or two, but that's not how we prepare assessments. We can't forecast what it's going to be. That's why we use that historical point in time. So my Appendix A, it addresses the limited and restricted use of post facto sales evidence in property assessment matters. So so sales occurring after the valuation date should not be used to reinforce any types of value, even during an appeal. So Appendix A also outlines the legislative framework supporting this principle, including Section 467, Sub 3 of the Municipal Government Act, and matters relating to assessment taxation regulation, the Alberta Assessment Quality Minister's guidelines, and the recording and reporting information for assessment audit and equalized assessment manual, all giving us the authority or the guidelines to use valid land title transfers and dates, using 3 years worth of sales that are all adjusted to that valuation date, and not relying on listing information if we have sufficient sales, which we do. So accordingly, we submit that post facto sales, listing activity, and other market information occurring after July 1st, 2025 should be given limited weight by the board and should not be relied on to retroactively establish market value for the current assessment year. We feel that the comparables that we have provided, although they do have differences, they do show the relationship between the age and the size to the end assessment, showing that we did account for depreciation, we did account for differences in square footage. So in summary, we are asking for the board to increase the assessment from $2,141,000 to $2,231,000. This is to maintain the equity with other properties within the town of Canmore. This value reflects the market value as of July 1st, 2025, once the corrected data was inputted. The revised assessment is supported by validated comparable sales. The subject property's physical characteristics were previously understating the assessment for that property, which is why we've done the correction. And then the complainant's evidence does not establish that the revised assessment is incorrect or inequitable. And we are asking the board to increase the assessment. Thank you. That's my submissions. I'll move to my own microphone now.
Thank you for your presentation. To the complainant, any questions for Ms. Batterman?
Mr. Chairman, I have no questions.
No questions. To the board, any questions?
Yep. A couple of questions. One, just I want to be clear on a couple of things, what you said. The increase in assessment that you've got here from 2.1, whatever it is, to 2.2, whatever it is, you're requesting that increase because you came across it during your closer examination and discovered there was an error,
Yes.
or it was misclassified, whatever. I don't care about the reasons in the past.
Yes.
What I thought I heard you say, if during the course of your work, you discovered this outside the complaint process, you would make the adjustment for the next year, correct?
We typically would, yes,
Yeah,
if the property
okay.
owner.
So help me out, why are you requesting it for this year, not for next?
Okay.
Well, I'm just talking that 100 grand component.
Yeah, and, you know, it's always a little bit touchy, you know, to come forward and ask for an increase to the property's assessment, to the Assessment Review Board. The reason that we've pursued this and gone forward with it is, first off, we did suggest to the complainant that they had the opportunity that this would be made for next year, and they've decided to continue on this course. The second part is the data was incorrect. They were not being equitably treated compared to other similar properties within the town of Canmore because they were getting an understated whole floor was basically not valued at the same rate as the rest of these types of properties. And then the last is the board does have the authority to increase assessments for things like this. They have the authority to confirm the assessment, or they have the authority to, you know, decrease it. Of course, you guys have the ultimate authority. So so we do feel it would be more fair and equitable, and given the fact that we've had these conversations with the property owner well into like the beginning of March, we've been talking with them. So
Yeah, okay, I get that, but
Okay.
I'm struggling with why you want to do it for the 26 tax year when I heard you say you would normally just wait till 27. The inequity component would still be there regardless on your properties outside the ARB. So I'm struggling why now?
yeah, and that's why we're giving, like, you have the authority to make that decision. We're asking you to do it. We're bringing it forward because we couldn't come forward and support or justify an assessment where the classification was wrong. We would have to have fabricated the data that we now know was wrong and ask the board to confirm the current the current assessment with wrong data. So rather than doing that and asking the board to incorrectly change the assessment or confirm the assessment, we've come forward with asking for an increase, knowing that that is the current correct value.
Okay. Second question, I just want to make sure I heard you right. You were talking about the realtor, and I thought I heard you say the listing price is not indicative, is not the market price.
That's correct.
But is it not indicative?
Not necessarily. With a short, limited time frame that the property was marketed for, 33 days is a very short time period. When we're looking at the sales that we provided, they do support a higher assessment. When we were in discussions with the property owner, we did ask why the property didn't sell for the amount that they had it listed for, and the only answer that we were able to get was that it was that the realtor just thought it was overpriced. But that doesn't make a market, especially when we're looking at sales. Sales is what makes the market for assessment purposes.
Okay, let me lay a hypothetical on you. If this property had sold for $1.7 million on May 27th of 2025, and you had the hard sales data, what would that likely have done to the current assessment with a new owner?
Yeah, it's hard to say, because we're not looking at just one single sale. We're looking at all of the sales of similar types of properties when we're preparing the assessments. So even if it had sold for 1.7, it doesn't mean that the assessment would have been 1.7 afterwards either, because as demonstrated, we have sufficient sales of other types of properties that are very similar to it, except for age and square footage, that would have risen that price on the assessment side, likely. I can't say one way or the other since it wasn't a sale and wasn't included. but-
Yeah, the assessment's not a precise number. I first want to admit that, but it would not likely be the 2.2.
I can't answer that with any kind of certainty without having included it in an analysis. I would suggest that there were sufficient other sales that may have been looked at as an outlier, possibly, because it is so far lower than what we're seeing based on actual sales transactions that the market can bear for that type of property.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Bannerman. I just had a follow-up question, just to clarify what I was hearing here. Is it correct that what you're saying to the board is that a listing price is not evidence?
That's correct.
Thank you.
I have two questions as well for your the provided comparables. I see this property is roughly 20 years younger. Were there not any other sales you could use that fit the year build better?
I wish there had been. It would have made, it would have explained things a little bit better. These were the best sales that we had for those types of, or for his property. They were the best comparable sales that we have. That being said, as part of our calculation, as indicated, we do the market modified cost approach. So that approach does take into account depreciation. It takes into account differences in square footage, et cetera, and the total calculation.
And that's the same thing for floor area as well?
Exactly.
Because this is smaller than the others?
Yeah.
Okay. That were all my questions. Thank you. Complainant's rebuttal evidence. Mr. Bullen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome.
I wanted to first say, using AI to get the comparables. AI, it's conjecture that AI makes up things. AI just aggregates data. You shoot a vector through the data, and it says, this is everything I find on the internet. So the citations are important. And on page 5 of my rebuttal, which I believe C3, page 5, so AI is using data source from experts, and the sources it's using to get its data is Canmore Homes for Sale, CREB, Canmore Homes for Sale, CanmoreBanffRealEstate.com, CanmoreAlberta.com, InvestCalgaryRealEstate.com, NewHomesAlberta.ca, CityToSummit.ca. Those are some of the citations. So I only put that forward as a secondary source to say this is what it says the market rose based on the data. Yeah, so I just wanted to say it went and validated the sources. I did provide several, if you look at C1, page 16, I did provide several semi-detached half-duplex homes. However, for my rebuttal and for the PowerPoint presentation, could you please, Ben, bring it up? I decided to use the assessor's comparables, so there would be no disagreement about the comparables. So, Ben, if you could bring up the second set of comparables. So, while Ben brings it up, I'm using the assessor's comparables so that we don't have a disagreement on comparables used. And I bring up the point that my home is 22 years old. The new comparables allow 3 and 4 years old. 2 are 600 feet larger. That's big. Other 2 are 400 feet larger. And then, yes, that's this comparable set. And then if you go 3 pages up to the assessor's first comparable set, yeah, in this comparable set, 7th Street Veterans Way is on a unique lot, maybe one of the most beautiful lots in downtown Calgary to have a home. It's the one with the creek right behind and the park right in front. The other one, 506 Fifth Avenue, that's very close to my house in age, close to my house in size,
And it's ironically the one that gets a 6% reduction in its current property tax. It was sold for 1.7, it was over 2 million, and it's being reduced by 6% to 1.967. I would also say that the respondent cites the legislation rules. I have no disagreement with the legislation for valuations. The request to raise is, as Pedwell brought up, inconsistent with the timing and previous statements inside the documents. The assessments for previous years, I don't understand how, I know our assessor is from Edmonton, but I don't understand how, even in working on the town of Canmore, you would miss multiple properties, like these three here, and several other ones, like these ones that are start at page 16 of my complainant, for over 2 decades, and not understand how the town is classifying duplex builds on the floodplain. So I would say the accuracy of the assessment and estimated market value is in doubt, and there's still been no ability not only explain, it's not the listing price, it's the lack of interest in a property that's listed at 1.75. 1,700 views, it was widely viewed, 4 in-house showings, no offers. And it was on the market for 45 days, and we pulled it off the market July 10th when the realtor said we would need to come down again in prices to get any interest in the property. So I would say that's my rebuttal, and I would just summarize. So I would submit to the board, Mr. Chair, that these issues together create sufficient doubt that the assessed value reflects the true market value as of July 1st, 2025 of my property.
And you're requesting to change market value to which amount?
1.75.
Thank you. Any questions to the rebuttal? No questions? Thank you. Any questions from the board? No questions.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Chair.
Mr. Bull. Argument summatation. Do you have anything to add, to summarize?
I believe I've already summarized. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. To the respondent?
Yeah, so I just do want to highlight or stress certain points from our previous presentation. Just that the data had been incorrect, yes, for 20 years, but that doesn't take away our right to correct the data when required and when it's been brought forward to us. We do regular reinspection programs. The difference is that the original 20-some years ago assessor in the town didn't understand some of the differences in the way that property types or properties are being built in the town of Canmore, being that they were classing a lot of these types of properties as a 2-story with basement because that's all they'd ever seen in different municipalities. So we've done a tremendous amount of work trying to find all of these and correct them. Mostly in the South Canmore neighborhood, but we were focused more on the detached housing than the semi-detached. So that's something that we will continue to review and continue to correct because it does make a difference in the valuation of a property, being a difference between below grade or above grade square footage, which impacts the value of a property. So I do believe that the comparables that we provided, that they do support the assessment. They're similar structure type, same quality of construction and finishes. They're all located in the South Canmore neighborhood. Yes, there are differences between the square footage and the age. However, as indicated in my presentation, these are accounted for in why the assessment is lower than the comparables that we've provided. In response to, basically the complainant's comparables, we do not feel we're comparable at all. If for just one reason, as being location. South Canmore is the premium location in the town of Canmore. Once you cross the highways, you know, all that kind of stuff. These properties are not worth as much as they are in South Canmore with their proximity to the Bow River and the downtown core. So we do believe that the assessed value of $2,231,000 reflects the market values of July 1st with the corrected data. This revised assessment, it has been supported by validated comparable sales. The subject property's physical characteristics were previously understated, and the revised assessments corrects those inaccuracies. We do believe that the property was assessed in accordance with the Municipal Government Act and matters relating to assessment and taxation regulations. We feel that it was prepared using mass appraisal and supports the market value as of July 1st, 2025. So we respectfully request that the Assessment Review Board increase the assessment from $2,141,000 to $2,231,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Betterman. Last word by the complainant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would say for the last word, I know that we've heard in very general terms how the legislation works and how the methodology works. However, we've also seen that even in the comparables, homes that are exact mirror copies of each other have different appraisal values after 3 years. Homes that are exactly the same size, square footage, same lot, that are in the second set of comparables. They're already highly differentiated, and that the assessor has not, in any time during this conversation, presented, here is how I arrive at the numbers. Here's the details. Here's how I go from A to B. And I would post that that's how I ended up with such a large gap in what the market was expecting to pay for my property when it was on the open market versus what my tax assessment is. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your cooperation and for your helpful presentations. At this time, I would like to ask the parties if they feel that they have been heard today and if they feel that they have received a fair hearing.
Yes, very much so. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. I will now declare the hearing closed. No further evidence or submissions may be received by the board. The Municipal Government Act requires a written decision within 30 days and gives the clerk an additional 7 days to issue the decision. We will make every effort to meet or beat those requirements, and the clerk will forward our decision to you at your earliest convenience. Thanks so much. clapping. Yeah, clapping, I heard that. Ready? Yep. Ready? Okay, 2:17. Good afternoon and welcome to this Canmore Assessment Review Board hearing. I would like to remind everyone that the ARB hearings are open to the public and this hearing will be recorded and streamed live. The video recording will be our record of hearing. We are here today to review the complaint and subsequent evidence as filed for tax roll 17425 at 214 Casal Place in Canmore.
Is it
213? Okay, thank you. Good point.
We're off to a great start.
So, tax roll 17425 at 213 Casal Place in Canmore. Perfect. I will start by introducing the panel and then ask the parties to introduce themselves. After that, I will explain our standard hearing procedure and ask for comments in that regard. My name is Christoph Breyer and I'm the presiding officer appointed to this panel. The other panel members with me today are
Councillor Tanya Faubert.
John Pedwell.
Thank you. Does anyone have any objection to the panel as constituted? I see none. I'm now going to have the parties introduce themselves, starting with the complainant. Would you please state for the record your name, organization, and your role in the hearing? Please indicate whether you are the owner of the property under complaint. Please come up to the podium and press that button so we can all hear you. Perfect.
Paul D'Agostino, I'm the owner of the property.
Thanks so much. Now to the respondent, would you please state for the record your name, organization, and your position with the municipality?
My name is Deanne Bannerman. I'm with Legacy Municipal Services, and I'm the appointed assessor for the town of Canmore.
Thank you. The LARP standard practice is to have the complainant present all of the evidence first, followed by questions from the respondent and then the panel. Next, the respondent presents their evidence, followed once again by questions from the complainant and then the panel. The complainant will have the opportunity for rebuttal. Finally, both parties will have an opportunity to present their final argument and summarize their evidence for the panel, with the complainant presenting first. If anyone needs a break or a problem comes up, please let the panel know as soon as possible and we can address those things as we go. I will also take this time to remind everyone to please turn off any mobile devices. Are there any questions regarding the procedure for today, or is everyone satisfied with the process as we laid out? Thank you. I see both parties have exchanged disclosure evidence before the hearing. To save time, I propose that we mark all documents for the record now. That won't stop anyone raising questions about admissibility later. If any such questions arise, we can still deal with them and strike material from the record later if necessary. Is everyone comfortable with the procedure? To the clerk.
Thank you very much. Yes, we received the following evidence for tax roll 17425. Complaint package C1, complaint form, 7 pages. Complainant package C2, complainant rebuttal, 1 page. And respondent package R1, respondent disclosure, 64 pages.
Thank you. Are there any other preliminary issues for the panel to address? I see none. Start the presentations unless preliminary issues result in the closing of the hearing without presentations. Mr. D'Agostino, We are ready to hear your evidence if you're set to go ahead. Please press that button. Thanks so much.
So just a little bit of background. I sent in some comments to the town through the taxes, I believe it is, at canmore.ca regarding the assessment, and that I didn't really agree with it. It's very similar to the package that you have that's 5 pages long there. I received some comments back from the town. I believe it was the contractor here. And she actually picked the same houses that I did. I've been monitoring the houses on my street for 13 years as a resident, and have the sale prices from PCS and from the Spin 2 site that the Alberta government runs. I submitted an appeal to the town office. I was hoping that the town might consider sending an assessor out and just have a look at the property and give me a reasonable value, and that probably would have settled it then and there, but that didn't happen. I met Ben on May 8th to confirm receipt of paperwork that he did in fact have, and I asked at that point in time, whether I could get the home just assessed by the town assessor, and I reiterated that again in my rebuttal, which I had to prepare in very short order because I didn't get the paperwork till the afternoon of the deadline for the rebuttal. So my rebuttal is pretty short. I couldn't really address everything in a 64-page template. So anyway, I'll give you the story of Cassell Place. There's really 2 types of homes on Cassell. There's estate homes. They're on 60-foot lots, tend to have custom features in them, quite upgraded, more luxurious. And then there's homes that are on the narrower lots. They back onto the parkway near Crossbow Point, Crossbow Landing. And they also back onto each other in the interior of the court. And there's 37 homes, so there's a good collection of homes that are very similar on the street. These are homes with A and B suites in them, and they're on 40-foot lots. So we're on a narrower lot than the estate home, so not really comparable in any sense to those homes, and the assessor didn't compare to those homes, which is fair by me. Several of the homes that back on the parkway that are like our home have undergone significant renovations. Our home is similar in age to the prior discussions that went on, were 2003, 2004, depending on which record you look at. So almost 25 years old. It's fairly common, I would say now, when a sale takes place, that a dumpster soon arrives in the driveway, and a 2 to 6 month renovation takes place prior to the person moving in. And that happened to 2 houses next door to me. So 213 Cassell has reference made to custom and semi-custom in the residential ratepayers report, and I would suggest that over the period of time of 25 years, there's probably been some differences in the way in which an assessor might go into a home and assess whether a kitchen, a bathroom, the flooring, the garage, that sort of thing is the same as what would be the standard today. And I would argue that based on Home and Garden TV and whatever else you might watch in the housing market, there's definitely a trend towards upgraded materials used in both kitchens and bathrooms. And you can see it even in inexpensive condos that are put together in Canmore right now. So I think I think it's definitely worth the assessor looking at those ratepayer reports and reevaluating what portion of them is custom and what portion of them is still semi-custom. But that's just a minor point that I just brought up because it was sent along in her package. When I received my assessment this year, I was taken aback by the valuation. It was 1.799 million in my assessment, and it seemed inconsistent with sales that I've been monitoring for 13 years using the PCS and SPIN2 data. I reached out to an experienced realtor that I know who's been dealing with real estate in Canmore for 25 years and very familiar with my property as I know this individual. And he indicated that the suites associated with the R1B narrow lots on Cassell Place often have very challenging floor plans due to the development of the suite in the basement. And I can attest to that with our property. 213 Cassell is no exception to this. The top of the staircase that goes down into the suite and the furnace chase, which is fairly large in the home, both protrude into the garage, limiting the floor of the left bay to a car of less than 16 feet. So you're 15 feet if you have an SUV and need a hatch that you want to be able to open in the garage. So, and the right bay is 13 feet deep, and that's limited because the staircase is built up into the garage by about 3 feet in a 5 by 5 square, and you still have to be able to walk in front of that right bay to get into the home itself. So you can see that you can't park a car there. It's not possible. So at best, it's about a garage and a half. The actual rate report that the town puts out, I think they have it listed at 480 square feet, which is like far in excess of the floor square footage that's available for a vehicle in that home. And I would say that's probably not an ideal situation when you're marketing a home that's in the $1.5 to $1.7 million range to have a garage that truly isn't capable of fitting, say, 2 Corollas or 2 RAV4s in it. And we can't do that. The lower level contains 1 bedroom. It says 2 bedrooms in the rate report. And that's because they're considering a small additional room that's in the basement. And that room has to be walked through to get to the living area. So it's not a bedroom with a doorway and a window that, you know, you can make private. You have to physically walk through the bedroom to get to the living area in the downstairs of the home. So I would argue that they've probably misassigned in the rate report the number of bedrooms in the home. It's really only 1. And the final thing is that they've got the square footage of the suite at 1,300 square feet, which it's not. It's 1 bedroom. I can only guess, maybe 800 square feet. I don't know. But and part of it is because what they did when they built that house was they excavated under the garage, which is like full-on basement under the garage, and really all it amounts to is like a storage space and a space where we have like a 8 by 10 exercise mat that my wife and I use for doing a little bit of in-home workouts. So it's not a living space per se like that, and it's not part of what the assessor, I think, in their rate report considers part of the B suite. The B suite's nice. Let's not make a mistake there. The living room, the dining room, the kitchen, and the 1 bedroom and the bath is very nice. 700 or 800 square feet, whatever it is. I can't measure it. But, you know, it's probably 60% of what's down there, 70%, I don't know. And that pretty much summarizes the oddities associated with our R1B build. But all the houses on the street, those 37 of them, they all have little idiosyncrasies. So it kind of balances out when you look at it from a sales perspective. It's just because putting these suites in the house was not as trivial as building a duplex. And so there's a lot of variation there, and I just wanted to point out what the oddities were in ours. So the narrow homes on our street have main floor living in the A unit, the B unit being the suite, and typically about 1,600 square feet, so a reasonable size home, and the homes are typically 2 or 3 bedroom. Overall square footage varies a bit from house to house by maybe 100, 200 square feet at the most typically, but the sales range for these houses is pretty narrow. Like if you take the average over a year or two, it would be quite unusual for a house to sell for 100,000 less or 100,000 more. It's quite a tight band, and it stayed that way for the 13 years that I've been there, starting out somewhere around the 900,000 range and working its way up to today's prices. So we moved in 2013, and the sales prices and property taxes assessments on Casell Place narrow lots have risen about 15 to 20% from 2013 to 2022. So fairly modest increase, kind of typical of what you would expect in a normal market, a couple percent a year. Beginning in 2020 with COVID, there was a small increase in sales prices. A more dramatic increase, though, was observed in 2023. And this was reflected in a significant increase in property assessments. The assessment of 213 Casell Place and other narrow lot homes rose, with ours going from $1.175 million in 2022. We originally paid $975 for the house, 10 years earlier, to $1.404 million in 2023. So it was a significant jump, but it was obvious that the price of the houses on our street were going up, and it was a fair jump. That being said, 2023 was probably the peak in sales prices, and this was reflected in a more modest increase in 2024. 213 Casell Place assessment increased just a little bit to $1.539 million. Since then, sale prices have been relatively flat. So 2024, 2025, you can include this year as well if you wish. This trend was confirmed by actually a slight decrease in assessed value of 213 Casell Place and the other properties on these narrow lots in 2025 property assessments. So our assessment actually decreased in 2025 from 1.521 million from 1.539 million. So it's a modest decrease, but it confirms in my mind that yes, the market is not doing anything really. It's just treading water, if you will. No house on a narrow lot on Casell Place has ever exceeded a sale price of $1.7 million. Not ever. With the highest sale price being recorded for a 5-bedroom, including in that 5-bedroom a master on the main level, 4-bath house, and that's at 330 Casell. Personally, I think that this house that sold in January 2024 was purchased by an investor or speculator, as it was returned to the real estate market immediately 1 year later in 2025. And now again in 2026. So they're trying to just recoup what they paid for this home, the 1.692, I think it was, the price. So that's the highest price that's ever been recorded on our street. It does have 3 bedrooms on the upper level, which is pretty big when you're considering that most of these homes are being purchased by young families or people like myself that have family that visits. Then it has a main floor master, which is pretty attractive to the old guys that are 70. But anyway, and then it has a 1-bedroom suite in the basement that's available for rental. So that's the 5 bedrooms. It's probably one of the only, if perhaps the only 5-bedroom on the street. Most I'd say are like ours being 3 and other ones being 4. Both 321 Casale Place and 305 Casale Place also sold in a reasonable time period and were included in the assessor's report and were included in my report as well. And they sold in the $1.5 to $1.65 million price range, and that's consistent with the homes on the narrow lots in Casale. Homes of this type on Casale Place, including our own, would likely fetch between $1.55 and $1.7 million. It's a fairly narrow range in price, and this has been consistent for all the 13 years that I've lived on the street and followed the activity of the sales. I discussed at length our assessment with a local realtor of 25 years who has experience selling all over Canmore. I asked for his opinion on my 2026 assessment of $1.799 million. He and I both agree that 213 Casale Place is one of the better homes on a narrow lot. We're certainly in the top quartile of the homes, with an excellent 2-bedroom floor plan on the A level. So our 1,700 square feet is better than most, I would say. But and he is experienced in the concept of a willing buyer and a willing seller, and provided me with listing data, price range for 2013 Casale Place for July 25. So he was giving me his estimate of what he thought that property was worth last July. Interestingly, he doesn't think it's changed from last July till now, and he agreed that my assessment, that I received from Canmore was at least $100,000 too high, and that a sale price in the $1.65 to $1.7 million range would be what you would likely expect if you were to try and sell that property. So he didn't think that there was any chance that we would be able to exceed the sale price of that one property that has kind of set the bar for the street. I arbitrarily picked the middle of the range, 1.675. I mean, I'm open to whatever you think is a reasonable number in between. How do you pick, right? The realtor's knowledgeable in what homes are worth, and I just went down the middle with it. So that's why I have that number there. I don't have any other reason for picking it. Now, the town provided sale prices adjusted to July 2025 for the same 3 Casale Place narrow lot properties I identified in my submission. I have to assume that the sale price estimated generated in the mass appraisal model for July 2025 would have some impact on the taxes. I'm not sure how these models that they use for the mass appraisals work precisely, but I have to feel that the generated estimate for a sale price must have some bearing on the assessment at some point. What I found that was rather unbelievable about these estimates by the mass appraisal model was that the price that they were putting on those two properties was $180K and $300K higher than what they were selling for, or what you would expect that property to sell for. They seemed inflated to me. I didn't understand how you could come up with a number that was that much higher than any home that had ever sold on that street. So one came in at 180K more, and one came in at 300K more. These hypothetical prices generated for July 2025 clearly do not represent what is actually occurring in the real estate market on Casell Place, and I pretty narrow vision there, just those 37 houses to look at, and there's enough of them turned over that you can tell what's going on. There's just simply no way also that an experienced realtor could be off by hundreds of thousands of dollars on a lower priced home in the Canmore market. And these are homes that they appeal to full-time residents. They're generally not speculative or investor type homes. And they're homes that people are buying that are on a more limited budget and are considering possibly enhancing that budget by renting out the suite that's associated with the home. Finally, I'm going to make a point because many years ago in another town, I received a similar assessment that was considerably higher than I thought was reasonable. That town, within a day or two, sent out an assessor who inspected the home and came back immediately with a more realistic assessment that I naturally accepted. And he noted in his assessment, and I don't know what sort of models or what they used in those years, but they used drive-bys as one of their assessing tools. And he said, yes, the drive-by just got it wrong when they looked at your house. When I've gone through it, it is closer to this value. I didn't even suggest a value to him. I just knew that it was considerably higher than what the home was worth. I was kind of hoping by putting forward comments to the town that someone would come out and spend a half an hour and walk through the house and say, yeah, you got it right or you don't have it right. That didn't happen. And so here we are, right? And I can see this is a lot more of a process than I had anticipated. And in my 13 years of following the house prices on Casell Place and my experience and the valuations put on it by an experienced realtor correct? Are they correct? Or is this mass appraisal model correct? I mean, I worked for 30 years in science. You got to put input into these models, and you get input out. You've got to evaluate the numbers that you're putting in. You got to evaluate the numbers going out. You might actually have to go to a house and look at it and see if it looks right, because I think that probably would easily solve my issue and take up a lot less time than this. So I just ask you to carefully consider my request for a reduction that's more in line with the valuations that I see on Casell Place and my realtor that I deal with sees on Casell. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. D'Agostino. Any questions from the respondent?
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you questions, so you have to answer it up here.
Yeah, no, that's
And then
okay.
they probably will have questions
I
for you
got it,
afterwards too. So in your, in the original disclosure that you provided us, or on the complaint form, you had provided us with a range of sales from July 2020 to May 2025?
Yeah.
And so did you do any adjustment to any of those sale prices to account
No.
for a difference in time?
No, those are the actual sale prices. I've got them from 2013 forward. And I realized that you only use the more recent ones, but I just put them in because I wanted to provide some context to what was happening in the market.
Sure. The second question I have is, you've mentioned your realtor friend,
It's
and
Drew Betts, if you want to know who it is.
oh, well, no, it's okay. I just wanted to clarify. So he didn't provide you with any type of market report or anything.
I asked Ben that, whether it would be advantageous for me to get a written report from Drew, and he seemed ambivalent. This was like a week ago or whatever, I can't remember. Whenever I had to confirm that you had my paperwork, I guess.
Yeah, and that's okay. That's okay.
That was on me. Yeah, I could have easily gotten a written report, but Ben didn't think it was all that necessary, so.
Well, I just want to highlight to yourself and then to the board as well that if something hasn't been introduced into evidence, it would be considered hearsay. And it doesn't
It's in
have.
my report.
I know what you've said, yeah,
Yeah.
I get it, yes, but because it's a third-party opinion, and there's been no support from that third party to support that opinion, it really should take little, or the board should place little weight on that. That's all.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Benneman. I'll see the board. Any questions? Start with you first.
I think I'm gonna get myself in trouble with the assessor, but that's okay, I'm gonna ask it anyway. Your realtor buddy, did he
Yeah.
actually, just, how much detailed work did he do? Did he just kind of do one of these, or did he
No,
actually
no.
research it?
He sold the home, he's been over to the home, he knows it. He knows that I didn't do any renos to it or anything to change it, so he's very familiar with it.
Okay, so it's his educated guess, I gather.
He knows what the houses sell for on Casell Place.
Okay,
Like, he knows the window, and he knows that 1.7 is kind of the top of the range, and we're at the top of the range.
okay. Thank you.
I do have a question. Thank you, Mr. D'Agostino. You spoke about the square footage of the garage.
Yeah,
In the residential ratepayer report, it lists it at 480 square feet. Is
Yeah.
that accurate, or is it a different size?
well, do you consider the square footage what you can park a car on? Like, what happened with the garage? So the garages start out, what, 22 by 20 or whatever, or 20 by, probably 22 by 23, something like that would get you close to 480 square feet. Then you do a big angle, so you lose that, you'd lose twice the size of this table, so that you have chimneys, your chimney chases and everything are in behind the drywall there. So that's one angle in the garage on the left side. And then on the right-hand side, when they built the staircase going down to the basement, the ceiling of that staircase projects 3 feet up into the garage with about a 5 by 5 or 6 by 6 square, whatever the square of the staircase is. So if you're going into the garage, the first 13 feet are good on both sides. Then you've got another couple feet on the left side. If you go another few inches on the right side, you hit the staircase, which is raised up, like raised up at least this high. And so you can't really park anything there because you still need 2 feet to walk by to get in the door, right? So if there's no cars, well, I guess a smart car would fit, you know, something like that, but.
So you haven't measured it in a way where you could provide me with a different number than 480?
I could measure it.
You could, but you haven't before today?
No,
No, okay.
no,
You men-
I'm just
and you
pointing
mentioned-
out, I'm just pointing out the quirks of the houses.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. What I'm trying to assess is whether or not the numbers in the report are accurate based on the
No,
information
they're
you're
not.
providing.
They're not accurate.
But
They're not accurate for the suite, and they're not accurate for the garage.
it's, so in terms of the garage, you've answered that question, but you don't have a number. For the suite, in the report, it says the square footage is 1,324. But you had given, said in your submissions that it was smaller than that. Is that
Oh,
correct?
considerably smaller, yeah. The
What,
suite-
do you have a
The suite
square
is like 700 or
footage?
800 square feet.
700. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I would say the garage, if you take the 480 and subtract, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not looking for estimates. I was wondering if you
Okay.
had the answer.
Well, if-
It's okay to say no.
yeah,
You
I
don't have
it,
that.
But if you wanted
It's
it, I
okay.
could get it if you.
That's okay.
Do you want to jump in and may answer? Can you come please forward? Thank you.
I just wanted to explain to the property owner because we have had conversations regarding his garage in the past and we have made changes to it. So you had sent this sketch.
I did
To
send the
us
sketch,
in
but
2021.
we never ever did anything about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, we did. We corrected your garage size to
Oh, did
match
you?
your sketch. Yes.
Okay, well, then that part is corrected if she's corrected it.
Oh, okay.
So let me ask you this, the new 480 square feet are
That's-
based
that's
on
not
that
right.
sketch?
That's correct.
But 480 isn't right.
Yeah, we sketched it and measured it and took your dimensions that you emailed to us in order to change the garage size.
Well,
So that's where that size
I'm
came
not
from.
gonna argue.
Just for
I'm
clarification.
not gonna argue, I'd have to go back and look at it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. D'Agostino.
Any other questions? Ms. Bannerman, respondent's evidence, please?
I'm used to you asking questions.
Not yet.
Give us time.
Take your time.
Sure, and I apologize, I could have included some of that conversation around the garage in our response. It wasn't really raised as an issue, so. Yeah, so we did have a conversation in March, I believe it was, where we had an email coming through, and at that time, like we do with most inquiries before they hit complaints, or sometimes even afterwards, we like to take the opportunity to provide property owners with their property detail report, so it shows all the information that we have on their property, as well as the sales that we use that we find comparable to support their assessment. So that was provided to the property owner, like I said, back in March, and we did not get a reply back saying that there were any data errors. Otherwise, we would have pulled the blueprints and, sorry, I'm out of breath all of a sudden. We would have pulled the blueprints and, or inspected the property at that time. So just to clarify, with regards to the garage size, we did make the change back in March of 2021 as a result of an email inquiry that the property owner had sent to us. At that time, they did send measurements and they did send a photograph or hand-drawn sketch of that. which is what we use to correct the garage size based on the unique configuration of it. So I'll go into my presentation now. We are here talking about the property at 213 Cassell Place. And we respectfully request that the board confirms the assessment at $1,799,000. So on page 3, the evidence before the board will demonstrate 3 primary points. Assessments in Alberta must be prepared annually. The legislated valuation standard is market value as of July 1st, 2025, and that the assessment has been prepared fairly and equitably using mass appraisal in accordance with the Municipal Government Act and matters relating to assessment and taxation regulations. So turning to page 4 through 6, we have a photograph of the exterior of the subject property, as well as maps with the location, an aerial view of where the property is located in its neighborhood proximity. So on page 7, we just have a little summary on the property's assessment, showing that it is assessed for $1,799,000, that it is a residential detached home, and it is situated on R1BE, which is residential detached plus entry level lot zoning. So now I'm on page 8. So assessments for the town of Canmore have been prepared in accordance with the Municipal Government Act and the matters relating to assessment and taxation regulations. This is where they require that assessments reflect the market value as of our July 1st, 2025 valuation date, and that we use mass appraisal techniques. So through mass appraisal, properties are stratified into groups of comparable properties. Common property characteristics are then identified for the properties in each group, and then a uniform valuation model is created and applied back to all these same properties. So we also, for this type of property in the town of Canmore, we rely on the market modified cost approach. And a description of this starts on my page 9 and through 10. So this is basically where we use the underlying cost value of the property, and then we adjust it to the market conditions based on the sales evidence that we have. So turning to page just at the bottom of page 10 there, I just want to talk a little bit about sales and time-adjusted sale prices. So we reviewed 3 years' worth of sales preceding the July 1st, 2025 sale date for residential properties. So what we do is we look at these sales over the course of a 3-year period, and we adjust those to the market conditions as of that particular date. We utilize multiple regression analysis. I'm so sorry. In order to do that, so what we're doing is we're framing the valuation date right here, and we're bringing all of those sales either up or down to meet that set point in time. So now on my page 12, we have the calculation of the property assessment. We are showing that we have the 480 square feet as part of the garage. It's a 1727 square foot, semi-custom 2-story and basement home. We are showing 1,324 square feet for the basement suite finish, and that would have been taken off the original building plans. So I just want to touch a little bit, because we've talked on this before. Assessments are prepared on an annual basis. The complainant hasn't brought any issue regarding that, but wanted to bring it up again, just saying that every year they're created anew, and it's based on the sales that we have. So speaking of sales, if you turn to my page 16, We have what we've called the validation of the assessment through comparable sales. There we've chosen 3 sales to compare with the subject property, the subject property being the largest of them, but still all similar in size. Similar in age and similar in location. So you can see on my page 17, these properties are along the same street or across the street from the subject property. So these sales, once adjusted to the market conditions of July 1st, do support the subject property's assessment at $1,799,000. The differences between those property assessments that are listed on that table are directly attributable to the differences in the property characteristics themselves. So the complainant has provided sales throughout the years, ranging in time from what we have through the Land Title Registry Office at August of 2020 all the way up to May 2025. 3 of those sales were the same sales as we've used in our comparison as well. So the older sales, they fell outside of that valuation period and were therefore not used in preparing the assessment. And the complainant has already stated that they did not prepare or provide any kind of market adjustment to bring those sales to the July 1st, 2025 date. So I did provide on page, so bear with me, on pages 28 and 29 of my submission, I did prepare or provide the MLS listing for the subject property. So it's got the interior photos there, and you can see that it is a semi-custom. It is standard for its age. Yes, very minimal renovations other than paint and such like that. And it fits in line with the comparables that we've provided, which also were not renovated. So I also want to say that listings are not evidence of market value because they do not represent completed market transactions. And same with the realtor opinion. It's not equivalent to a validated market evidence. We wouldn't just use a listing value. When we're preparing the assessments, we have to use valid land title transfers. Specifically, the complainant, it is third-party information. There was no report provided, which may have lent some support to the judgment call that the realtor has made. I'm not claiming it's not true. I just don't know if it is or not because there's been no evidence provided. And so in summary, we submit that the assessment was prepared in accordance with Alberta legislation. The appropriate valuation methodologies were utilized. Valid sales within the legislated valuation period support the property's assessment, and that the assessment is fair and equitable with comparable properties in the town of Canmore, and accordingly, we respectfully request that the board confirm the assessment at $1,799,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Benneman. Any questions for Ms. Benneman, please?
So if I was to have provided a like a property appraisal, would that hold any water with you?
That would certainly be a determination by the board. We would still argue that it's not necessarily a valid transaction because it hasn't sold.
Okay.
So we're looking at sales themselves.
So you really you don't put any weight in an appraisal anyway?
No.
And that's probably why Ben was sort of ambivalent when I talked to him.
Yeah, and so that determination would be the assessment review board would make the determination of how much weight they would want to put on that material. It wouldn't be me.
No, I was just curious to know because like it's something that's easy to do, like it's a few $100 or whatever to have a licensed assessor come out, or $500, whatever, to do your home. Something you could do before you listed a home if you were really not trusting the realtors necessarily, which I can attest. You want to be careful, but it's important, I think, to know that where the assessment report would fall within this context. I was just curious.
Any other questions for Ms. Benneman?
No, that's good. I appreciate that.
Perfect. I'm looking for the board. Any questions?
Ms. Bannerman, on page 16 of your responder report, you got a bunch of comparables here.
Yes.
Just curious about a couple things. So you got 4 places on Cassell there, and you've got them assessed, including the complainants here. Is there any reason why you don't have sales price adjusted for the complainant?
That would be on the page 18.
Page 18?
Yeah, page 18 would be where I listed, you might have different page numbers. Look for my page numbers, not the ARB's
Yeah, I'm
page.
looking at your
Okay.
page numbers.
Yeah.
That's,
That's this,
this page 18 is response to sales comparables.
that's this
by-
page here.
Yeah,
And so that's where I don't have time-adjusted sale prices, is that what
Yeah.
you're asking? Yeah, and so those 3 sales that actually occurred within the valuation period are the same sales as on my page 16.
yeah, well, no, I'm asking why 213 does not have one where your 3 other comparables do.
Yeah, and so it didn't sell within the time frame.
Oh, these are actual sales?
That's the subject property is highlighted in yellow, and then the other 3 underneath there are
Oh,
sales.
okay, I'm
Yeah.
just trying to make sure I understand before in the next question, because
Sure.
looking at like 330 Cassell, you got an assessed value of 1.5, you got an adjustment sales of 2. And that seems pretty much out of whack, whereas the other 2, like 321 and 305, are more or less in the ballpark. I guess I'm kind of going, any idea why 330 is so different?
You know, honestly, I've provided the property detail reports on my, sorry, I've got to have my binder and the microphone at the same time. I've provided the property detail reports for these on pages. Pardon me?
And the number is also adjusted, right?
Yeah,
So
no, I understand that.
so it's not, it didn't sell for that much.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, okay.
So all the supporting documents I have for the comparables that we've provided are on the pages 30 through 41. And so that's where we have the property detail report. And so when we talk about the difference between the property characteristics and the assessments, they're directly related. That lists all of the different property characteristics that we have on those properties, as well as the land title documents. So you have reference to the actual sale price, the non-adjusted sale price as well.
I guess where I'm coming from, in a perfect world, which we don't live in, you would expect the assessed values to be roughly, give or take,
Yeah.
within a range of, a fairly narrow range of your adjusted sales price. Okay.
Yeah, and that is part of the mass appraisal process, right?
Yeah.
We're looking at all sales, and unfortunately, sales are not a perfect world.
Yeah.
It really, you know, it depends if they've been marketed. It depends on sometimes if it's sold on a Tuesday versus a Friday. You know, it depends on that exact captured point in the market. You know, if it depends on a lot. So they're not perfect, which is why we use mass appraisal process for this. So that there's at least an equal level playing field for people when they're paying their taxes as a reflection of their property value through the assessment process.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions? I have one question. I'm hearing from the complainant that he offered to the town, to the assessor, to come out and have a look at the property. Is that standard process that you do that, or is it once in a while, or why did you not do it yet? Or
Sure. So we do a regular reinspection program. So around every 5 years, we physically look at the data on the properties as well as we can. We try knocking on doors, but not everybody wants to let us in. But in particular, this property, we were fairly comfortable with the data given that the MLS information supported what we had on our assessment screen. Normally, when we're not under such compressed timeframes, so disclosure for this batch of hearings for today and tomorrow was due the day after the complaint deadline. this year, so we're extremely compressed from the time we're going from inquiries for the 67 days straight into complaints, and we have not to make excuses, but we're here every 2 weeks for the next month or so. So we don't have the time, whereas normally when we have hearings a little bit more spread out, we have time to say, hey, maybe there's something wrong, we're gonna go physically inspect your property, but we just don't have the opportunity right now. And that's not a very good answer, but it's the truth.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. To the complainant, any rebuttal evidence? Please come forward to the microphone and turn it on. Thanks so much.
Yeah. I would say this. On April 9th, when I filed my 5 pages with the town and paid the fee, that's when I clearly put it at the end with my signature that I would have been very happy to have had an assessor come out and do a walkthrough of the house to see whether he felt it was accurately assessed, and I probably would have ended it there if he was you know, given his, like, they're accredited people. I have a trust in them. And then the second thing is that I must admit that I kind of agree with Mr. Pedwell with respect to the valuations that they project for a certain date based on a sale that was perhaps 1 year earlier. Increasing the price of a property from the sale price or from my threshold at 1.7 million by $180,000 or $300,000 is ludicrous for homes of our standard that I live in. I mean, that is a lot of money. This isn't South Canmore where I'm living. It's a more modest neighborhood, and the pricing does not change like that. That's not at all reasonable.
Thank you. Any questions to the complainant? No more questions? Any questions? Argument summatation. The complainant first, if you have anything to say.
I think I've made my point more than once. I don't want to prolong.
Thank you. The respondent, please. Ms. Benneman.
Sure, just to quickly summarize, we do feel that we have provided some very good comparable sales to the subject property. They're very similar, with the subject property being the largest of the properties chosen, which is reflected in their assessment. In contrast, the complainant's submission relied heavily on historical sales dating back to 2020 and 2021, which we weren't using. We agree with the complainant that a lot of the sales are in that area. They're very similar to the subject property, so we relied heavily on those ones. Seen in my area photos, they're very, very in close proximity to the subject property. And then just to summarize, I mean, we submit that the assessment was prepared in accordance with Alberta legislation. The appropriate valuation methodologies were used, and that the sales that we provided support the assessment, and that the assessment is fair and equitable with comparable properties within the town of Canmore. Accordingly, the respondent respectfully requests that the board confirm the assessment at $1,799,000. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ms. Benneman. Last word by the complainant, please.
Yeah, I would just ask the board to consider the fact that properties in that area have never exceeded $1.7 million in value. We're seeing an assessment that's $100,000 higher than that for the home that I'm currently living in. I can only assume that the pricing that their model is producing for their 25 date influences how the assessment is made. And personally, I think it's an error. I think that their valuations that they're creating are literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in excess of what anyone could reasonably expect to sell their property for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeAgostino. Thank you, everyone, for your cooperation and for your helpful presentations. At this time, I would like to ask the parties if they feel that they have been heard today and if they feel that they have received a fair hearing.
I think the hearing was very fair. I appreciate the opportunity to put forward my experience living in Canmore for 13 years, and I really appreciate Mr. Chair and the other members of the panel. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Ms. Bannerman? Thank you. I will now declare the hearing for closed. No further evidence or submissions may be received by the board. The Municipal Government Act requires a written decision within 30 days and gives the clerk an additional 7 days to issue the decision. We will make every effort to meet or beat those requirements, and the clerk will forward our decision to you at our earliest convenience. Thank you. Turn on the microphone. Good afternoon and welcome to this Canmore Local Assessment Review Board hearing. I would like to remind everyone that the ARB hearings are open to the public and this hearing will be recorded and streamed live. The video recording will be our record of hearing. We are here today to review the complaint and subsequent evidence as filed for tax roll 15054 at 6 Van Horn here in Canmore. I will start by introducing the panel and then ask the parties to introduce themselves. After that, I will explain our standard hearing procedure and ask for comments in that regard. My name is Christoph Breyer and I'm the presiding officer appointed to this panel. The other panel members with me today are
Tanya Faubert,
Sorry, John Pedwell. John Pedwell.
Does anyone have any objection to the panel as constituted? I see none. I'm now going to have the parties introduce themselves, starting with the complainant. Would you please state for the record your name, organization, and your role in the hearing? Please indicate whether you are the owner of the property under complaint. Please come forward, press the button. Perfect.
Good afternoon. My name is Francisco Gomez. I am the owner and occupant resident of 6 Van Horn.
Thanks so much. The respondent, please.
My name is Deanne Bannerman. I'm with Legacy Municipal Services, and I'm the appointed assessor for the town of Canmore.
Thanks so much. The LARP standard practice is to have the complainant present all of their evidence first, followed by questions from the respondent and then the panel. Next, the respondent presents their evidence, followed once again by questions from the complainant and then the panel. The complainant will have an opportunity for rebuttal. Finally, both parties will have an opportunity to present their final argument and summarize the evidence for the panel, with the complainant presenting first. If anyone needs a break or if a problem comes up, please let the panel know as soon as possible and we can address those things as we go. I will also take this time to remind everyone to please turn off mobile devices. Are there any questions regarding the procedure today, or is everyone satisfied with the process as was laid out? Thank you. I see both parties have exchanged disclosure evidence before the hearing. To save time, I propose that we mark all documents for the record now. That won't stop anyone raising questions about admissibility later. If any such questions arise, we can still deal with them and strike material from the record later if necessary. Is everyone comfortable with this procedure? Yes. Mr. Stever?
Thank you very much. We received the following evidence for tax roll 15054. The complainant package C1, the complaint form 4 pages, the respondent package R1, respondent disclosure 41 pages.
Thank you. Are there any other preliminary issues for the panel to address? See none? Start the presentation. All right, Mr. Not Van Horn, Mr. Gomez.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to present some of my thoughts regarding the assessment. And I wanted to make a point that while I will be brief, it's not a reflection that is not a big deal for us. It is. But I just want to be to the point. And I wanted to provide you a little background, and I'll be brief. I have been a property owner in Canmore since 1993. While living in Calgary in 93, we purchased a lot in homesteads. The roads were not even there. We had to go through the bush to find it. And the following year, once the roads were in, we built a house that we used as a part-time residence. We had it for 7 years. And then we purchased a lot in 2001 when we left Calgary. And 5 years later, we built our home, which we reside within there since for 19 years. I spent over 40 years in the hospitality industry and got transferred 24 times. We bought homes and sold homes 24 times. It doesn't make me an expert in real estate, just enabled us to sort of get a sense of what provides good value when you're looking for a home. I'm not a lawyer. I have no knowledge of appraisals or assessments, so I do not question the methodology or the process of the current assessment. But I do question the outcome. And that's why I am appealing the value of assessed to our home today. As is typical, it was explained to me that the process by the assessor the first step was to communicate with the assessor and try to gain some knowledge as to how they come up to this number and so on and so forth. And was told that the mass appraisal process does not provide for one-to-one comparisons. And I understand that, but the reality is once you have a massive question on it, then I would think that the process should involve working collaboratively with that assessor to try to understand why there's significant differences and then trying to explain. In my opinion, and it may not be the case, I don't see it that it is the onus on me to prove what the house is worth. I think it's more on the assessors to prove how their math works, and that's what the house is worth. So I was given 2 comparables, and which I had major issue with. Comparable 1 was 19 Prospect Heights, with a sales and adjusted price of $8,675,000. At the time that house sold, it was the highest priced home sold in the history of Canmore. Okay. So how can you take the highest priced home in the history of Canmore and compare it to a house? They're different, from finishes, from size, from lot, from location, from views, and so on and so forth. The second comparable was 13 Van Horn, same street that I live in, but it was a brand new property. The comparables that I got said it was built in 2021. That is incorrect. It was built, I saw it being built last year. That's when it finished. And that had a price of $6,985,000. Again, elevators, larger home back into the river, all those kinds of things, which makes it, to make it comparable to my house, to me it didn't make any sense. So I couldn't get through to move the assessor from their views that those were the numbers and that's what they were going to use. So in the absence of what I consider relevant comparables, I suggested that we could use 4 Van Horn, which is 2 houses from our home. I felt it would be a good comparable given that over the years, for the last 5-6 years since the house was built, the assessments of both homes have been very, very close. They have smaller basements, but they have a larger lot. They have better views. Some of those components that really impact the value of a home. So for the last 5 years, there's been less than 1% variance in the assessments that we've had for that house. It was interesting that in 2023, I had concerns about the assessment increase. We had a 42% increase in the assessed value of our home. So I did have conversations and emails and so on with the assessors, and we worked collaboratively. They provided 5 comparables throughout Canmore and so on. And we ended up having the assessor come and inspect the house. They also inspected Fort Van Horn. They the assessor, and I brought this, and the assessor did note to me that, just let me see, that there was prior to the inspection, some of the information they had on file was not accurate, and that's why a reduction was warranted at the time. We now have reliable property data. So they did bring down the assessment by $430,000. Interestingly, they also brought down the assessment of Fort Van Horn, which we were almost at the same level, and they brought down the same level. So to me, the difference is that this assessor this time is telling me, well, Fort Van Horn is different than your house. It wasn't reflected when physically both homes were inspected. And yes, their basement is a little smaller, but the fact that it's better views, the fact that it's a 20% larger lot, all of that sort of made up that you ended up at the same assessed value. So, for this year assessment, our home has increased in value more than $400,000 over Fort Van Horn. So how can the 2 homes that had been assessed basically less than 1% each, all of a sudden one go up by $400,000? To me, it makes no sense, and I realize that it's perhaps part of this mass appraisal system that you can't compare home to home. In fact, 8 Van Horn, which is 2 houses down to the other side, which is a larger home with magnificent river views, and a larger home that typically in the last number of years has been on average $280,000 higher than our house for the views and the obvious reasons. For this year, is assessed $900,000 less than my house. It doesn't make any sense. If the concept of an assessment is to looking at this market values that is described in the assessor's evidence of what the concept is, how can you have, because of this mass appraisal process, one house that is clearly bigger, that is clearly with better views, be lower than the other one? You know, there is something is not, doesn't seem to be right to me. So anyway, I couldn't argue on the comparables because that almost $9 million house is a magnificent house. Actually, we know people that live there, and it was in the Globe and Mail when it sold as the highest house. So, you know, you couldn't argue that, no, that wasn't as good, but had no relevance to comparison of our house. Nothing has changed in our house since the day it was built. We painted the outside, but it was the same color. And it's been the same. And nothing has changed on the other one, the Fort Van Horn. It's 5 years old, we're almost 20 years old. So what I'm, in closing, really what I'm requesting is the assessment of our house be adjusted to $3.5 million, which is a 15% increase. And it is, one of the things in here, if I may just go back. Furthermore, when I continue our discussions with the current assessor, and I reinforce that 32.6% increase, was a little not realistic. He wrote a note to me. The note says, while we note that the broader market saw an overall increase of 12.5%, the average increase in the homestead's river lot areas was approximately 23.4. In that context, your increase of 32.6 is not outside of the range. That's almost 10%, equates to almost $300,000. If this person thinks that $300,000 is within the range, I mean, that doesn't make any sense. The fact is that the average price range increase in sales in the homesteads between July 2024 and July 25 was between 10 to 15%. That was the range, between 1.9 million to 2.2 million. So what I'm looking at is we'll go and have an appraisal in the high range of 15%, but 32 is just, it's not reasonable because they're coming up to almost $1 million increase in value because they're comparing it to the highest sales, to two highest sales. So, and like Forrest Gump said, that's all I have to say about that.
Thanks so much for your presentation. Any questions? No more questions? Any questions?
Yeah. You mentioned a couple of things. I'm just curious where you got your information from. The place on 8 Van Horn, you said the current assessment value is approximately 800,000 less than yours?
No, it is, I'm sorry, it is 977,000 less than ours. It used to be about 280,000 more because it's a larger home, has river views and so on. And now it was assessed to 3,900,000. My home is assessed at 3,977,000.
Okay, where did you get your information on 8 Van Horn?
In the website of Canmore.
Okay, it's just not in the package, I just want to know
Okay,
where it's
I'm
coming
sorry.
from, that's all. Okay, great, thank you.
Thanks.
I have a question.
Yes.
You said in your package, page 4, number 4, Van Horn is assessed at 3.585 million. Has
Yes.
that property been sold?
Nope.
Not
No,
sold.
that has none of the homes been sold. That's the assessed value.
Thank you. And my second question is, how did you come up with your calculation of $3.5 million?
I'm just looking at 15% increase, which is sort of the high range of sales in the homesteads.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the board? No. Okay. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Ms. Benjamin, please.
Just in case. So today we're here to talk about 6 Van Horn in Canmore, Alberta. Tax roll number 15054. So if we turn to page 3 of my evidence, I do want to say that the respondent will demonstrate that assessments must be prepared on an annual basis. The valuation standard for the subject property is market value, and the assessor must prepare assessments in a fair and equitable manner. Now on page 4 through 6, we have an exterior photo of the subject property, and we have its location in close proximity to the river in the Homesteads neighborhood. Subject property is assessed for $3,977,000, is a residential detached home on R1 land, and that can be seen on page 7. So turning to page 8, property and assessments in Alberta are prepared in accordance with the Municipal Government Act and the matters relating to assessment and taxation regulations, commonly referred to as MRAT. The legislation requires municipalities to prepare assessments annually using mass appraisal techniques and to reflect market value as of the legislated date of valuation date of July 1st, 2025, while reflecting the physical condition of the property as of December 31, 2025. The legislation specifically requires that assessments reflect market value, reflect the fee simple estate, reflect typical market conditions, and be prepared using mass appraisal. As explained within the disclosure, mass appraisal differs from a fee appraisal of an individual property because standardized valuation procedures are applied to groups of comparable properties to ensure fairness and equity across the municipality. So on the bottom of page 9, the subject property was valued using the market modified cost approach. As outlined, this methodology is a hybrid of the cost and sales comparison approaches to value. Improvements are first valued using cost principles and then are adjusted to reflect market behavior through validated sales evidence. This is the most appropriate valuation methodology for detached residential houses within the town of Canmore because it mirrors the actions of buyers and sellers in the marketplace, and there's sufficient sales data available to derive reliable market estimates. So we do use, when preparing assessments, 3 years of sales preceding the valuation date of July 1st, 2025, and these properties are then adjusted to the market conditions of that one point in time, our valuation date. So on page 12, we have the residential ratepayer report, which shows all the different components of the subject property, being a 2,360 square foot bungalow with basement in the good custom quality. This property, as well as 3 or 4 of the neighbors, were inspected by myself back in 2023, and changes were made or corrections were made to the subject property's data based on that interior inspection that we conducted. So now on page 13, the complainant places significant emphasis on the increase in assessment between prior taxation years and comparing to neighborhood properties. However, Alberta legislation is clear that assessments are prepared annually and independent of each year based on market value as of that legislated valuation date. We've included the court and board decisions there for your reference as well. And these authorities confirm that assessments are created anew every year. Prior assessments are not the starting point for future assessments, and proportional changes in assessments vary significantly between properties and neighborhoods. The respondent respectfully submits that the year-over-year percent change increases are not recognized valuation methodologies and do not, on their own, demonstrate that an assessment is incorrect or inequitable. So now turning to page 16, this is where we have provided some sales comparables. I will admit and agree with the complainant that these are superior properties to the subject property. You've probably heard me say before, I wish we had perfect comparables for every property out there that we're trying to assess, but what we do is we use what we have and we use them as a proxy for preparing assessments for the unknowns. The property information that we don't have, we use what we do have and what we do know. So the subject property is a walkout bungalow with a walkout basement, and the respondents' comparables are primarily 2-story homes with walkout basements, but they are all of similar quality of construction and finishes to the subject property, which was confirmed on the site visit that we did in 2023. So turning to pages 18 and 19, and I appreciate that the question was raised regarding 8 Van Horn think it was 8 Van Horn, because that information was not provided in the complainant's disclosure documents. So we don't have any information here before you today on 8 Van Horn. Rather, we do have information on 4 Van Horn, which is what the complainant had identified as a comparable property to the subject property. I would say that 4 Van Horn differs materially from the subject property with regards to the quality of construction and finishes that is placed on that. The 4 Van Horn is a custom quality, which was verified by the assessor back in 2023 when they were all inspected on the same day. So it was very easy to judge differences between the properties and put them in their appropriate location or classification. So even then, you know, the subject property as being superior is still assessed fairly close. We're only talking about $400,000, and I know only in Canmore do we say only $400,000 difference between them, but they are fairly close to each other in assessed values at this point anyway. And just of note, neither of these two properties, the 6 Van Horn or the 4 Van Horn, sold during the valuation period that we used. So, and I just want to highlight that, and this was confirmed by the ARB clerk, the only disclosure package that we got from the complainant was what was contained on his original complaint form, so no additional information was provided after that date. So now to summarize, the assessment was prepared in accordance with Alberta legislation. The assessment reflects the market value of the subject property as of July 1st, 2025. The respondents' validated comparable sales support the assessed value, even though they are for superior properties in terms of size to the subject property. And the complainant's submission relies primarily on year-over-year assessment comparisons and opinion regarding similarities between the properties, which is in contravention with the legislation and court decisions that we've provided. We believe the assessment is fair and equitable relative to the comparable detached residential properties within the neighborhood. The respondent further submits that the complainant has not provided sufficient, valid, verifiable, or market-supported evidence demonstrating that the assessment is incorrect, inequitable, or unsupported by the market as of July 1st, 2025, and respectfully requests that the Assessment Review Board confirm the assessment at $3,977,000. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Ms. Bannerman. Any questions from the complainant, please? Please come forward if you have any questions. And push that little button.
Really, rather than a question, just a comment. The issue is not what the increase was over the prior year. The issue is the disparity of homes that are very similar and that for years have been assessed very close, $400,000. It is a lot of money, even in Canmore. So that's, and also why is it then there's another homes is a better quality, bigger, they get assessed less. That's the real issue. I mean, I wouldn't like it, but I probably would have less issue if, 4 Van Horn was up 32% too, because then everything has gone up. Then it would continue to show it that there is some equality in the product, in the value of the product. And when those two homes were inspected at the same time, the quality and the size of the land and the views and all of that would have been taken into account to come up to whatever the assessed value was, which was very similar to 6 Van Horn. And so that's really what the question is, more than what is the percentage increase.
Do you want to reply to that question?
I didn't hear a question in there for me to reply to.
No, as I said, I don't have
Yeah.
a question.
Okay,
Simply stated.
Okay.
that's all from your end at the moment? Okay. Any questions? To Ms. Bannerman?
Thank you, Ms. Bannerman, for your presentation. I just want to clarify that when you're comparing 4 Van Horn and 6 Van Horn, the material differences noted is in the basement, in the size of the basement, and the custom finish versus unfinished basement. Is that correct?
The custom finish versus the good custom finish,
Good
which is the subject property.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are the majority of the differences, but of course and we've included the residential repair reports in here for 4 Van Horn as well as 6 Van Horn, so it shows what each of the individual components, what the true differences are between them.
Yeah.
There's also a difference in age, and the property at 4 Van Horn is also a bi-level versus a bungalow. So just a slight difference.
Thank you. That's it.
Any questions?
Yes, I do. You said you re-inspected 6 and 4 Van Horn in 23?
2023, that's correct.
How long does it take for those changes to roll through the assessment?
Well, they would have been made immediately, at that time. So rather than go through the complaint process, we found the data, corrected the data, and made those changes for the current assessment year, where the property owners then accepted the value.
Okay,
So they would have been done in 2023.
based on the data I've got here submitted by Mr. Gomez, which I assume the assessment numbers are correct, there was a re-inspection in 23, and then the updated assessment in 24 were within 20 grand of each other. And then in 25, it's within 60 grand of each other. Pretty, given 3 millions, it's practically the same. And then in 26, we get this huge jump on both properties.
Yeah, so the Canmore market has been steadily increasing over the time,
Yeah,
and even
absolutely.
looking at where we're talking about some of the percent changes, they're not huge changes to begin with. So at some point, once you get proper sales or you get new sales in the data set, you lose a year, you get a new year. It does impact the percent change, obviously, but that's also why we don't just use and rely on a percent change year over year. We have to look at all the different components because properties are going to sell for different depending on what the market is wanting from them. They'll sell for different values based on location, based on size, house type, that type of thing. So when we made the change in 2023, you see that the number went down, and it went down again in 2024 for the subject property. It doesn't mean that the market all across Canmore went down. 2 years ago, we saw a 22% average increase. So what I would suggest is that this is catching up based on some of the new sales or some of the better sales that we have. We're just catching up to where the market should be for these properties. And that's why we don't look at it on a year-by-year basis. We're looking at it, longer term,
Yeah, I
where
know,
it
but
balances out, yeah.
based on the data that we've got here, we've got a substantial number of years where they're pretty consistent in terms of valuation.
Yeah.
And given the area that it's in, that kind of sort of makes sense. I mean, you can quibble plus or minus 50 or 100 grand, and then all of a sudden, I'm sorry, Mr. Gomez's house is what kind of house?
It's a bungalow, a
A
walk-up
bungalow, and the other one is a
A
two-story.
bi-level. Yeah, it's
Well, they're both bungalows.
No, Mr. Gomez's home is a bungalow. The property at 4 Van Horn is actually a bi-level. And there is differences between those two properties, though. They are stratified differently. So they're in two different, Mr. Gomez's home is a good custom quality of construction and finishes, whereas 4 Van Horn is a custom quality of finishes. So it's a lower quality home than the subject property.
Yeah, I'm just struggling. Okay, thank you.
I have questions about the comparables used. Let me just go to page 16. Were there not any better comparables? Or
These were the
any
best.
more comparables? Is there an opportunity to compare this home to close the gap, because you're comparing 6 Van Horn to 17 Prospect Heights sold for 8.6 million, and the result of this comparison is that 6 Van Horn is assessed at 3.977. So it's double, basically.
Yeah.
So I would love if we would have more or better comparables.
As would I. Unfortunately, I mentioned before, these are the best comparators. One of the major thing that we look for when looking at good comparables is the location that they're, like where they're physically located. So this particular neighborhood in Van Horn, it is a premium location, I would say. Most of the properties are backing onto the Bow River. On the back, there's a big walking trail that's there. They're very closed off away from a lot of the traffic and things like that too. So they are a desirable location. So trying to find the same quality, because that's also what we look at, is looking for somebody that's a good custom home in the same location. So that's where we end up with sometimes limited sales, but not to say that the assessments are not prepared using our mass appraisal. So we're using those sales, but we're also looking at the individual components of the property, which is why it's half the value of the sales comparables that we've chosen. And it's because it's an older property. It's a smaller property. It doesn't back the river like the other properties do. It backs more of the green space areas. So those are all taken into account based on, like I said, what we know, to apply to the unknowns, which is limited sales in the area. They don't go up for sale very often.
Yeah. Another question, sir?
Yes, if I could, may. Just kind of on a bit of a tangent, but not much. So what happens if you don't have any,
That was my question.
well, she's saying these are the comparables. And I'm saying, what happens if you don't have comparables, period? What do you do?
Yeah, and so when we're looking at preparing assessments, we're not just looking at those two. Those are the ones we're bringing forward as our best comparators. But we do use all of the sales in the area. So we're looking at, as our stratification, we're looking at all of the sales that sold within this market location. So not just this Van Horn, it's all of the sales within the market, the homesteads market location that back onto the river kind of thing. So we do have enough sales. Where we don't have sales, we would look at proxies. So we would look at other locations, trying to bring it in, saying, okay, let's bring this one up to the same level as the other ones are. So it really depends on, we may look at, maybe even post facto sales, looking to see if there's any market evidence that we have while we're preparing the assessments. Not that they're directly used, but we're using it to gauge our estimates of value to ensure that we're reflecting the market. So I don't know if that helps you at all. Like I said, I know, I really wish we had better sales for every assessment that comes to the Assessment Review Board. Unfortunately, these are, like I said, the best that we have.
And just to follow up on that and for clarity, when we're talking about the assessment number and we're talking about it being fair and equitable, are we talking about a fair and equitable price that the people can sell it for, or are we talking about fair and equitable distribution of taxes? How does that work?
Yeah, and so when we're talking fairness and equity, the assessments are used to distribute the taxes, so that's where the fairness. Assessments mean nothing unless they're getting taxed on it, really. So what we're looking at is the assessments are basically that point in time and saying, okay, well, your property is worth, and market value can be a range too, just like we've talked about. Sales aren't always predictable. So we have this range of value, and that puts you into that equity mark because now you're going to be paying your fair share of the taxes because you're assessed at your market value. There is equity sometimes when there would be errors in some of the property data. We would want to maintain equity between properties. So if we had one that was, say, bad, we would fix it, like we've heard earlier today, to increase it so that it's equitable with everybody else. Because, like I said, you just can't. Assessments are really meaningless. Until it comes to just distributing the taxes.
Thank you, Ms. Bannon. To the complainant, any rebuttal evidence? Please push that button. Thank you, sir.
So this time I do have a question. What I don't understand is the homes. I mean, there's a lot being said about 4 Van Horn and 6 Van Horn and how my house is bungalow and the other one is 2 and all those things. Both homes haven't changed. They haven't changed since they were built. And mine has been a bungalow for 19 years, and that one has been 2 stories since 5 years, 6 years it was built. It has a bigger lot, which it should increase the value to offset a 1,600 square foot, 1,200 square foot basement and so on. And in the past, I always took it as there was that balance. So I don't understand how all of a sudden in 1 year, bungalow versus the other become an issue as to why my house is $400,000 more than 4 Van Horn, when they haven't changed and for years have been almost the same. So that's my question.
You want to answer that question, please?
Yeah, so every year, I mean, this is the reason why we don't look purely at assessment changes. We're looking and analyzing the sales. So different properties will appreciate or depreciate in time at different rates. You know, also, like we said, maybe your assessment didn't hit the 22% average increase that was hit back 3 years ago. So now it's making up for that, trying to get you more to the market value level. So regardless of them having been the same in the past, it doesn't lock them in to be the same unless they were identical properties. These are different properties, they're different quality classification, they have differences in their size, their basement finish, their structure type, you know, and like you had mentioned, the lot size too. So there's a lot of different components to these properties that are creating, not necessarily having to make them equal to each other, because they're different enough that they should be different. So lower quality homes maybe didn't go up as much as your higher quality home did. And so that's why you see the percent difference and the difference in the assessed values as well.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Argument summatation. Any arguments? Mr. Gomez? To the respondent, any arguments? Final?
I'll just take the opportunity to highlight that, you know, percent change, year over year percent change isn't a valid way of determining what an assessment should be. The differences come into differences between different property types, locations, etc. We've provided the board and the complainant with several decisions, board and court decisions, showing how percent changes are not a valid way of looking at the assessments. We do feel, even though the sales comparables were superior to the subject property, that it does show that the subject property is within the right range of property in comparison to them in their location. We also have shown that the property at 4 Van Horn has material differences to the subject property at 6 Van Horn enough to contemplate that their assessments don't have to be tied together. So because of this, we respectfully request that the Assessment Review Board confirm the assessment at $3,977,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Last word by the complainant, if you have any. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your cooperation and for your helpful presentations today. At this time, I would like to ask the parties if they feel that they have been heard today and if they feel that they have received a fair hearing. Thank you. I will now declare the hearing for closed. No further evidence or submissions may be received by the board. The Municipal Government Act requires a written decision within 30 days and gives the clerk an additional 7 days to issue the decision. We will make every effort to meet or beat those requirements, and the clerk will forward our decision to you at our earliest opportunity.